What's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to Chasing Upstairs with your girls, Alexa Ramos, and my girl over here, Donna Conrad. Donz, we're pretty excited to share our first ever podcast and our first interview.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We had the pleasure of interviewing Liz Benn from the league offices. Alexa, do you want to share a little bit more about her?
Liz is incredible, you guys. I'm really excited for you to listen to her interview and listen to the things that we spoke about. Liz is a senior coordinator of player programs, baseball development, and diversity at MLB, with MLB at the commissioner's office. She's been in multiple programs. She's done multiple events. She's worked with some of the best and brightest people within the Major League Baseball organization. So just, and all of that at just a young age of 27. I mean, it's incredible what she's done, what she's accomplished. She's an awesome person, and most importantly, a great role model. So I think that she's one of the guests that really epitomizes why we do this podcast and why we're trying to open up a world for people to understand the different jobs that go behind the scenes of this beautiful world we work in.
Right. And something that I loved about her interview that I don't think either of us knew beforehand was that she didn't plan for this to be her career, which as you listen, you'll come to find that this wasn't her intent. And I love that it was over time that she kind of fell into this role. And again, I don't want to spoil everything, but just know that, just like Alexa said, she is one of the reasons that we think this podcast can be so amazing, is that not everybody plans to go into the sports or the media field, but sometimes you just end up there. And so I think we had a really great time talking to her. We hope you guys enjoy this interview as well. So I think without further ado, let's let them hear it.
Here you go. Introducing Miss Liz Benn. All right, everybody, welcome in. We are so excited. Donna, it's a really special night for us, and it's our special podcast for us right now. It's our first. So welcome everybody and thank you for tuning in. But more importantly, we have a rock star guest joining us today. And I'm so excited to talk to her and introduce you guys to Liz. So without further ado, everyone, we are welcoming in Liz Benn with us. She is the senior coordinator for player programs, baseball development, and diversity with Major League Baseball. And her story is just incredible. She's an incredible person. So I'm really excited to bring her in. So Liz, welcome. Thank you for joining Chasing Upstairs.
Yes, thank you
so much. I'm so excited to be the first guest. What an honor.
So it's a little couple things we're going to do today, or tonight, I should say. Since Donna and I, we're new to the Zoom gang, we're new to the podcast gang. So there may be some fun bumps along the way, but we're excited to have you. And
we'll work out the kinks. It'll be fine.
We'll be all right. But I think we should just dive in, Don. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, just to give everybody a little bit of background. So Liz is from Toronto, Canada, and I've got to be honest, like, I don't know much about like how different Canada is versus here. So if you want to just start and let us know, like, you've only been here for like what, 5 years?
And yeah, so a little over 5 years.
Yeah. So like, how different would you say growing up in Toronto and then coming here? Was it like a culture shock, or is it more similar than I'm thinking?
So I would say that Toronto itself is probably like the most American city in Canada. And I know Canadians are going to hate me for saying that, but it's a huge city. I mean, it's like in between the size of like, it's a bit bigger than Chicago at this point. And so it is a big city. And I grew up kind of like in the actual city, not the suburbs. So it was an easy enough transition for that reason. But I would say that there's like little like subtleties that I like was not expecting in moving to New York. It's just little adjustments, but overall it was pretty easy. I would say that one of the big things though, that like within the context of my job and stuff though, is that working in sports was never on my mind when I was growing up here. in Toronto. It never an option. It just like never crossed my mind, never fazed me. And so I think that's like a difference with the US is that people see those jobs in sports more. And so it seems like more attainable. Meanwhile, I kind of like fell into it just through like the love of baseball almost.
Right.
So that's I think where we want to start it, because we know that you started playing baseball, not softball. I want to specify that and make that very distinct. She started playing baseball when she was younger, and there's a big difference there and a big culture that goes behind that. Because I would say in America, most girls are pushed into softball. Girls play softball, boys play baseball. That's kind of the stereotype. But what you have recognized, or what we've been seeing over the last couple of years, is that girls can play baseball too. And so I think that's a big part of your early story and career. Can you tell us kind of what inspired you to start playing baseball at a young age, and kind of take us through it, how you led up to be where you are today?
Absolutely. So I think it all kind of started with the fact that I have a brother who's older than me. He's 4 years older. He played baseball, and it's just the two of us. And so he needed somebody to practice with. And so I was the person around. So we would play catch in the backyard. We'd go to the park. We'd throw a ball around. And I just loved doing that. Growing up, I was also just super tomboy. And so I just wanted to do what he did.
Preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right
I'm
up our
company
alley.
here. So I think I asked my parents after my brother's first year in the league, hey, can I do this too? And they were like, well, why not? And then I kind of showed up that first day, and it was just like, oh wait, she's also the only girl. And I think it just never fazed my parents, but I was just like, well, whatever. I mean, I play with my brother, I play with his friends. Why would I not be here? So it just didn't really.
Right.
So I just went ahead and did it. I think from a young age, unfortunately, you start to like see the biases like pretty quickly. I was telling a friend yesterday that the first time that I noticed it was I was 7 years old, and I was invited to play in the T-ball All-Star game. Huge deal, top of my resume. But there was a coach who was kind of like, oh, are you sure? Like, do you really want to do this? Are you sure? And I realized like at 7 years old, that was because I was the only girl there. And I was like, okay, this guy doesn't want me playing. But there was enough support around and enough coaches kind of excited for me to get to the next levels and everything, that I was just like, yeah, I have a path here. I can keep doing this.
Right. And now, question about that, because I know, like, I grew up playing softball, Alexa grew up playing softball, and there were some of my good friends that until high school, they chose to play baseball. It was a couple of them, not many. But I guess in Toronto, was baseball pushed more than softball, or was it there wasn't a big culture around like softball for girls?
There just wasn't a culture around. So like in my neighborhood where I was growing up, I could walk to the little league field, and so I'd play baseball there, and there wasn't a softball division or anything, and it just wasn't on the radar at all.
Interesting.
Kind of the only option for a bat and ball sport. Later on, I kind of noticed it a bit more, but still it would have taken like so much effort to like drive out to these places and do the tournaments and everything.
Right.
Where baseball was just a little closer to home, and at that point comfortable too, because I'm a pitcher, and that doesn't translate to anything in softball. The pitching is drastically different. And so it was just what I did. So the switch didn't really seem natural to me.
Well, so you said you played in college, and and when you were at the University of Toronto, you played softball for the first time. And again, with both of us playing softball, it's two very different games. So like I can't imagine you went from pitching in baseball to pitching in softball. So what did you end up doing when you played there?
So I played first base, which was my secondary position in baseball too, and then a little bit of second. What was kind of wild though was, so I walked onto the team because obviously I wasn't getting recruited because I wasn't playing the sport.
Right.
For my tryout, I showed up, and the coach was like, who are you? Like, how do I not know who you are? And I was like, well, I play baseball. And he was like, oh, another one of you people. I was like, okay. And he's like, oh, you want to play?
You people.
Exactly. You people who try to play baseball. So I said, I want to try out for first base. And he said, okay, I have these 2 buckets of balls. Go stand at first. I'm going to hit them to you. And if you drop any, just leave pretty much. So I was kind of like, yes, like I love this energy. Perfect.
Right.
But me never having even seen a fast pitch softball game before, I went and stood where you would play first base in baseball, which is like almost second base in softball. And he was just like, well, what are you doing? He made me go like halfway or so between like first base and home plate, which is where you play in softball. I learned in that moment. And I was just like, this is insane that this is where, like, how you do it and where you stand. So it was a huge adjustment, but I think the fundamental skills, they transfer over.
Yeah.
So it was a tough transition for me. Hitting was really hard. Fielding was fine, but hitting was pretty hard for me.
Yeah.
Like the first fast pitch softball game I ever saw, I was at first base and like starting at first base, and it was kind of wild, but I loved playing softball too. And I also encourage like all the female baseball players who I interact with, try out softball because you're going to get skills that will transfer to baseball. It's a great environment, great experience. So why would you not do that? Just be open to
absolutely. Yeah.
So what I find interesting is you had your athletic career in college and you had that transition, but moving forward after you graduated, you started working with the Blue Jays, or that was one of your first baseball career related jobs. How did you get in contact with the Blue Jays? Did you meet someone through the softball world at college? Kind of, let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I was on the softball team, I kind of just had this thought one day, we should be doing some volunteer work. Why are we not doing that? Yes, we'll do like a kind of university wide thing, but we're not doing stuff as a softball team. So why are we not going to the Blue Jays? Since that seems like just an easy thing for us to do. So I contacted the Blue Jays and I was like, hey, I play on U of T softball. Can we volunteer for you with something? And the volunteer coordinator at the time, Mark Betancourt, who's one of my best friends still, he was like, yes, absolutely. We need more female coaches. This will be great. The girls who we work with, it'll be great for them to be able to see women doing these things. So I volunteered with them for a couple of years with some of the softball players, the men's baseball team too. Some of them came out. And then I worked with them for my last summer in Toronto, kind of as like a field coordinator and like director of like one of the sites, and then doing some like more advanced camps on the side. And that was, again, I didn't think of that as a career in sports. I was like, this is a cool summer job. This is a cool thing to do, but I never even, yes, this could be my career in the end. But it was an amazing opportunity and great. I mean, that was my entryway into sports, and everything kind of followed from that.
Don?
No, go ahead.
This is the beauty of Zoom. We're going to do this together.
Right.
But I find that interesting. And I find that even though that wasn't necessarily, like you said, it was just a summer job. It was a lot of fun. You're with your teammates, you're with the Blue Jays organization. Then it's a good way to bring the community together. But the funny thing is, in a way, it did spark a different creative side of you and a passion that you were developing at a young age, which the both of us have went through in our own stories as well. But what I found interesting about you is that you went to college and studied philosophy. So I'd like to know, because, were you maybe pursuing wanting to be a teacher at that time? Or did you want to be a writer? There's so many things you can do with a philosophy degree. How did that transition to eventually coming over to New York?
Yeah. So I love when I'm speaking to like women who are trying to get into baseball or sports generally, and they say, what should I study in college? And I'm like, you probably shouldn't ask me that. Well, the easy answer is like sports management,
right?
Economics, things like that. And I'm just like, I studied philosophy. Not only did I do like philosophy, but the question that drove me and got me into my master's program in New York was, why can I put a water glass on the floor of the Museum of Modern Art and we can see it as art? That's what I was studying. That's what my whole life was. Considered being a professor, like getting my PhD and just like doing that question as my life's path.
That's awesome.
What a turn then, right?
Exactly. It was not expected. I am not lying when I say I had no intention of working in sports, but I just think that philosophy and just through doing like university generally and just appreciating kind of like the process of university and the whole experience rather than just like the actual subject matter, you pick up so many skills that end up being really useful in any field. So like philosophy is all based on critical reasoning, argumentation. And I now do some work with like lawyers who work at MLB. And so I have kind of that way of thinking down that I gained through and like asking those weird questions about art that are onto the workplace.
I think that's something that you said something very interesting, that again, you had no intention of working in sports, right? But what we've come to realize, Donna and I have these conversations all the time, what we come to realize, whether we pursued sports immediately or not, it's every tool possible somehow is so effective in anything you do, but in sports, which might actually be the last place you think you're going to use them. A lot of people just have a tunnel vision when you want to work in sports. Sometimes they just think, oh, I have to know the game and the craft and the skill of it and the numbers side of it. But no, you need to understand the intelligence behind it, the patience behind it. There's more than just being on the field. There's a lot that goes off of it. And this is why you're someone that, like, you're one of the epitome examples of the kinds of guests we want to have on this podcast, because it's just that there are so many people out there, whether they're in high school or in college or someone later in life that's looking for a new career path, that always had a passion to be in sports or to be in media. And, you say to yourself, like, I'm never going to do it. I don't have the tool set. I don't have the skill set or the experience. Like Liz, you're such an inspiration here. And we're not even like halfway through the story yet, but
right.
which is the best part about all of this. But I just like to point that out, because people don't think about that. They just think, oh, in order to be in sports or in order to work in sports, I have to do everything sports related. I can't get out of the box. And it's actually better to your advantage to be out of this box than think out of the box. So I just think that's like a really unique tool about you that probably did help you in like advance. So take us a little bit through when you finally got to school and then your next career moves there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to New York in 2015 to pursue the master's in philosophy, again, about that question about a water glass on the floor of a museum. But I was talking to my boss from the Blue Jays and just kind of catching up and everything. And he said, well, maybe you should reach out to this organization, Harlem RBI. It's not too far from where you live, where you go to school. Maybe you could coach there. So I thought, great. So I went to Harlem RBI, interviewed. They hired me as a baseball and softball instructor. So I was mostly with softball, but then I would also do kind of like the winter training and pitching clinics and stuff like that. So I was doing both. And I just absolutely loved it. And again, this was just this is a great part-time job, works with my schedule.
Yeah.
To I absolutely love the kids. I still talk to a lot of the kids like nonstop because they're but then kind of towards the end of my first year in New York, my boss from the Jays said, well, maybe you should also reach out to this woman at the commissioner's office. And I was just like, what are you talking about at the commissioner's office? Like, why would I ever do that? And he's like, really, you're similar people. And I think you two would get along, but also just see if she can maybe give you some like career advice. And I'm thinking career advice, I'm going to do a philosophy PhD and just like read books. So I met this woman, Jess Dunn, who worked in the youth programs department. We spoke, and it was just a great conversation. We got along so well. I didn't know what MLB's youth programs were, and so I learned all about that. And she said, okay, I need you to talk to my boss, who's David James from MLB. We're starting to think about girls baseball, so I think you two would have a lot to talk about. So we spoke. It was too late for an internship that year, but then he said, make sure you contact me in like January next year and we could try to set this up.
Cool.
So I ended up getting into an internship there in the youth programs department. At that time, also kind of questioning my career path. And I was like, oh, wait, maybe I can do baseball for a living. That's cool.
Yeah.
Finished my master's and went into that internship. There was like 2 weeks of overlap. So I didn't even have a second to think about other careers. I was just kind of like in it right away.
Wow.
I mean, it's interesting to me that you went from it not even being on your radar to you just kind of falling into it. And the funny thing is too, you went with the Blue Jays to do volunteer work initially. Like that's how you contacted them. And then sure enough, you had no idea that you were building this connection that would then thrust you into this career all of a sudden. And then also to move away from this really quick, you also started playing in the New York City Metro Baseball League. Please tell me or tell us how that happened, please.
Yes, absolutely. So when I was, going back a little bit, when I was 16 years old, I tore my labrum in my shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep playing? And at that point, I just couldn't imagine not playing. So I think that kind of shifted like almost my whole mindset with baseball. And it wasn't just like the casual thing I did for fun, but it was kind of this driver for me. And it taught me how to goal set and kind of like plan my development and everything, because I was essentially rehabbing my arm on myself after surgery. So at that point I was setting all these goals. So my first goal was play for Team Ontario, the provincial team, and the Canadian Women's Championship. Because when I tore my shoulder, I realized, oh wait, there's women's baseball. I didn't know that that was a thing. So I played on Team Ontario for 2 years, met that goal. And then I thought, okay, what's the next step, especially with me moving to the US. So it's not like I can pursue like Team Canada or something. So I thought, well, playing with men again, which I haven't done since I was 16, I think that would be really cool. So moved to New York, emailed 6 different men's leagues in the area. One of them got back to me with a tryout date. The emails
Wow.
Dear gentlemen, like, thank you for expressing your interest, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, well, I'll show up because there's a time and a place and everybody will be surprised, but I've kind of dealt with that my whole life. So show up to the tryout. It's a whole lot of looks, get some bad comments. There's nobody wants to play catch with me to warm up. It's just, okay, like, I've dealt with this all before, but it's all like in one place within like the 15 minutes of arriving right now. So it was kind of like tough to get over that and like not just leave, honestly. There was kind of that mental block, but I was really fortunate that one of my best friends, still one of my best friends, the guy Jonas, he came out to me. He looked like Josh Donaldson, and I was like, oh my God, this league is way too good for me because he's literal all-star. So Josh Donaldson guy, as I called him at that time, he was like, hey, do you want to throw? And I was like, yes, please. And I'm like, there, like, so we threw, we warmed up, and then he was like, you're a pitcher, right? I was like, yeah, how did you know? And he's like, well, it's just obvious from the way that you throw. And that was kind of like that encouragement I needed to like get through the rest of the tryout. Went through the tryout, it went really well. I actually got to pick my team from a few different ones that asked me to join them. So I just started playing, and through that played 1 year in kind of the lower division, next 2 years in the higher division. And it's been a really cool experience for me because it's also just a different culture. I mean, I went from playing with women in Canada to like Dominican League Bronx, which is like a bit of like a culture shift too.
Not only are there no women, you're in New York. This is not
New York.
like,
it's the Bronx.
It's New York. Like you are.
Exactly.
Yeah, there is no mercy. There is no mercy. Yeah. And I say that with love as a tri-state girl. And even though I'm a Jersey girl, will always love New York. But, you know, it is definitely a culture shock. And just, I think it's incredible. And it shows not only the obvious bravery and the fact that you had confidence in yourself to know that you belonged there and that you didn't let, you know, something like you didn't let something, which many, I would say 9 out of 10 women or girls would easily be, you know, frightened or intimidated and just think, you know what, maybe this is not for me. This is not my time. And I love that you just, at least, who knows what would have happened, but you would have never known if you didn't at least try and put yourself out there. And I just think that's such a very strong message to show that you had nothing to lose and you believed in yourself. And
there's other areas of my life too, where it's just, I have doubted myself before and maybe held myself back from opportunities, but as like with that one, there was nothing to lose. I mean, I showed up to a field, I didn't know anybody there. If I embarrassed myself, like, great, they all see it. They just continue to type that girls can't play baseball. But if I do something right, then it's going to shift something in their minds. And now it's like all these guys, when they have a daughter, every single one of them messages me and they're just like, she's going to play baseball. And years ago, they would have done that. So it's just cool to see like the culture shift in the league too. They'll see like a female baseball player on Instagram and like 40 dudes will send me a message being like, look, there's another one of you out there. So it's kind of nice that
sorry guys.
No worries. But yeah, it's just nice that I've accepted, I've been able to build a community there, and it's been a really cool experience.
That is really cool. I mean, you think about, there's a lot of people who do see baseball as, you know, a man's game and everything. And yes, softball has gotten really competitive here, but you bring up a point before about how softball really wasn't an option for you, at least growing up, you know? And so and being able to change people's minds, like open people's minds to the idea of, hey, like, women can do this too, and we're going to be pretty good at it. And it just says a lot about you as a person you know, pushing through a situation like that, because I can think of so many times that if I were in that situation, I don't know if I would have stayed. Like, it's just one of those things that it could be very deterring to hear the comments and see like the looks and everything, and to just kind of push through that. So I mean, and now obviously you're incredibly successful in your career as well, so it makes sense. I mean, you know, like you're not going to be one to sit back. And so after that, I mean, how, from RBI softball, how did that continue for you to grow?
Like with the working part or playing part?
The working part.
Yeah.
So so I guess when I switched from like that, didn't switch, but I moved from that position with RBI softball and baseball to the commissioner's office, and I was in that youth programs role. And again, just all these little things kind of fell into place to help me along. But I happened to be accepted to this conference that one of my professors from undergrad pushed me to do, that was at the Hall of Fame. And it's a conference called Baseball and American Culture. And so I decided that I would give a paper about girls and women in baseball. Again,
Wow.
I applied for this before thinking I'd work in baseball. It just happened to fall into my first month interning. So of course I needed to kind of talk to MLB and say, hey, I'm planning to do this. Is that okay? So they were cool with it. But I think that word kind of spread that I was doing it and I was focusing on this topic. And I'm an intern at that point. So it's like, okay, people don't usually like put so much like time investing in like meeting in interns. But I think there was this like new topic that I was kind of exploring, and like at a pretty developed level, a couple people noticed it. So I was doing the internship in youth programs. It was fantastic. But then somebody said, oh, Paul Mifsud wants to meet you. And I said, the vice president of labor relations.
Yeah, my eyes
was
just
like,
off that you just said that name. Like,
yeah, I was like, wait, what? So it's like this person who I had seen him on a panel the week before. I was like very intimidated by this person, and they were like, yeah, he loves women in baseball and wants to help kind of advance that effort. And I was like, okay.
wow.
So 34th floor, go to his office, which is next to Dan Halem's office, the deputy commissioner. And I'm just like, hey, I'm Liz. I do stuff, like, wanted to talk to me.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation about it and it went really well. And we just like clicked right away. He wanted to hear about the paper I gave and just all the details of kind of like my thoughts behind it, the theory, but also what do we do to fix the issues that exist. So when I finished my internship with youth programs, he hired me into an internship in player programs. So there are a couple layers to it. One was he leads all the player education, which includes topics like respect, diversity, and inclusion. So I was able to kind of help out there. But he also said, like, broadly, tell me what to do for women in baseball. And I was like, okay. So I just had that opportunity to talk to somebody who really cared about this, cared about it when his job does not depend on caring about it at all. And so I think there's just like more passion involved when it's just like a genuine interest. And I interned with them for several months, and then did some like paralegal type work. And then at the end of it, I was working on a case. Things went in our favor, and I kind of found a piece of the puzzle that helped us get there. And I talked to Paul, I talked to Dan Halem, and they kind of said, okay, we want to hire you into a position for women and girls in baseball. Write yourself a job description. And so I got to write a job description where I got to decide, okay, I want to help with girls baseball growth, elite development, women in baseball. And it's just like taken off from there, where I get to work with all these different departments in such great capacities, working on what I've just kind of like done my whole life and what I've been passionate about. And it's just really, really cool to have that space to do that, and see everybody kind of developing and progressing in that area, and so much change happening in such a short period of time too.
I think
incredible.
That's amazing. And I want to point this out because it's something. So Donna, you've been at MLB Network now for how many years?
Over 2 years.
Over 2 or 3 years. This March will be my 5th year there. And a lot of the time, one of the questions I get often actually is, how are the people there? How are the people that, how do they treat women there? How do they treat young girls coming from college there? Do they accept you? Do they take you seriously? And, I have to be honest with you. I understand it's a stereotype, but it's something that I like to break and put an end to and say that there are so many incredible men and people just in general that work at MLB, women, men, but it almost like personally offends me sometimes because the people there have helped my career so much, and I've been so open to listening, to learning, to understanding, and like you don't see that a lot on the surface when you hear about any sports in general. But it's nice to hear that story, Liz, because like here's a guy here's a man who had a lot of power and experience and held a high position and regard, and we're transitioning and changing every year, and we're growing this game and we're developing this game, and the inclusion of women and girls is just fantastic. And it wasn't always that way, but within the last 5 to 10 years, it's been developing, especially the last 5. It's been growing so much, and to take a chance on you, it speaks about your character, but also it shows that there are people there that are open-minded to these new positions, these new opportunities. What can we grow to advance and achieve with women in this game? And just whether you're playing, whether you're a fan, whether you just want to educate yourself on it, there's so many platforms, like you said. It makes me so happy to hear that, in any level, in any department, there are so many people willing to give you that chance. If and we have to, any department or level, I do feel like there is a little bit still of a stigma where women do have to work a little bit harder, proves ourselves a little bit more, like take that extra initiative. And it's not a bad thing. It actually almost, I think, is a confidence booster, in my opinion. It drives me in a positive way. But to see that, and to like for you to develop your own job like criteria is just,
I know, how
it's
cool is that?
amazing. Yeah.
I think what you were saying too about just like having allies, I do think that there is this view that like, oh, women, if you're in sports, you must have done like all these incredible things to be there. And there's no way that like you have to be the top person there in order to have your position, because there's such a stigma against it. There's so many people who are supportive. My whole life, anytime I say I play baseball, men respond, "Do you mean softball?" I have not gotten that once at the commissioner's office or from a club person or from a player even. It's not a thing. And I think that it's probably the same thing with media too, where like all the hate is coming from the outside, and like all the noise is coming from the people who are not actually involved. And I think when I look at my experiences, the guys who I play baseball with who are supportive of me, they're either way better than me or they're not like as good as me. The guys who like I'm kind of like competitive with, those are the ones who there's sometimes problems with. And then I even think of going to other events, like the American Baseball Coaches Association. I went to their event last January, and I went into a pitching session, and there were like 300, 400 people in there. And the people who I knew were all like former major leaguers, people who work with clubs, kind of like all these people at the top. And those are the guys I'm hanging out with. And then it's like guys who have like just started coaching like a junior high team. Those are the ones who are whispering about me and like laughing at me, and just, I don't want to put them down because they're starting their careers. That's great for them. But it's like those people who are kind of outside of like that space that are often critical. Within baseball, it's only been support for the women and girls initiatives.
And that's great to hear.
Yeah. Donz, go.
That's really great to hear. And I'm curious now that you have been able to create this position at the commissioner's office. Like, what is it on a day-to-day that you do to help push this initiative forward?
Yeah, so nobody really knows what my job is, including myself, because it's kind of broad. It's
why we're doing this podcast.
Stuff. Let's go.
Here's the point. Here we are.
So it changes a lot day to day. So I would say that some days it's talking about like overarching like strategy and like creating those plans. And that's the stuff that I think really excites me, because it's like, okay, here's a culture shift. Like, here it is. Let's do it now. Other days it's booking flights for 64 kids to fly to Florida to be part of the event. At events, I usually run kind of like the player development aspect of it, which is, it's so much fun. That feels like me just like playing almost. So I do that sometimes. Other times it's running conferences for women interested in jobs in baseball. Today I spoke to a young woman who's thinking of a career in baseball and just kind of providing her guidance. Other days it's doing kind of like more technical work, or sometimes I will review the Major League rule book or something like that. So it's just this whole mix of things. It never gets boring. But it's a lot of, I love that it's a lot of both high level kind of strategy stuff and also some stuff that's like, okay, you're on a field and you need to pick up balls right now. So it's between there.
You'll always
like
be the player
mix.
inside.
Exactly.
No matter what, whether we start at 5 years old or we end at 95 years old, you're always going to finish or start and finish as a player inside.
Oh yeah, my glove comes to every event with me.
Oh yeah,
I can't not do that.
I really want to give a little backwards context to this of how Liz and I became friends and how we got to put this all together, and now we're all going to be sisters here. So, but what's exciting what was exciting was that it was in 2019. I was asked by MLB Network to go and cover, to field produce an event by Major League Baseball that was promoting girls in baseball and playing baseball. And MLB was hosting a tryout team in upstate New York, and we were covering it. So I did a little bit of research and knew who the people that I had to speak to. And one of those names was Liz Benn. So I'm without seeing any photos, I see all the criteria. I see all the things that Liz has done, all the things that she's involved in. And I'm like, wow, I cannot wait to meet this woman. I cannot wait to pick her brain, to understand like the things that she's gone through, how she got there. Like this is a boss woman in the game here. And I'm like super inspired by this. Like she must have years and years and years under her belt. And I show up to the event, and it was very well organized. It was all these awesome young girls, really excited, coming from all over to try out for this team. And just like, absolute athletes everywhere, which was so exciting to see. And the game is growing in this direction. And I'm looking around and I see some coaches, and who I didn't know was Liz at the time. I see Liz, that all the girls are coming up to her and they're high-fiving her and asking her questions. They're laughing. And I'm like, wow, what an atmosphere this is right now. Where's this woman that I'm supposed to meet, Liz, with, I'm thinking a clipboard or a suit or this, or just walking around on the outside, like just, cruising, taking notes. And finally I asked someone, hey, like, do you know who Elizabeth Benn is, or Liz Benn? Has anybody seen her? And, they point me in Liz's direction. I said, you got to be kidding me. Like, no way. She looks younger than me. And she's done all of this. Like, this is awesome. I am so excited. And Liz, you couldn't have been friendlier. And we kicked it off immediately. And I kind of stood back and said, hey, here's who I am. Here's what we're here to do. And took a step back and just watched everything and how it went out. And it was so incredible to just watch how excited these girls were and how excited like the staff was there to help them and advise them and coach them. It was really well done. And as I'm walking around and taking notes and just observing these girls, I see another woman walking around, and it was Kim Eng. And I tried really hard not to fangirl. I'm not going to lie, guys. Like, you see most people see baseball players and freak out. To us, it's part of our job. They're like our coworkers. So we don't have the same effect. But when I saw Kim Eng, just kind of knowing who she was before even this year yet, but who she was at MLB and the things that she had accomplished, it was just like, oh my gosh, now I get the chance to like meet her and work with her and interact with her. And this is just this whole day, what an incredible experience. But Liz, as the three of us know, I should say, this year, Kim became the first GM in Major League Baseball history for the Miami Marlins. And, but most impressively, she became the first female GM in professional sports, period. And it's just such an accomplishment. And it's such an incredible milestone for all girls, females, women, just in general. And to watch that someone can do it, someone so well deserving can have that opportunity and shine this light and pave this path for all of us if we choose to head that direction or in a higher level position. And Liz, you got the opportunity to work with her and know her on a daily basis and on a friendly basis. Talk to me or talk to us a little bit about what Kim Eng brought, you know, on a daily basis to the commissioner's office, to your department, your group, and what was it like working with her?
So it was the coolest thing. I mean, the first time that I met Kim, I was kind of like on the verge of getting hired full time, but I was still interning. And at the time, I was interviewing for the MLB Diversity Fellowship Program, and so I actually had an interview with her as the first time I ever met her. I had seen her like walk by my desk before and been like, oh my God, that's Kim. But then I just like go into her office and I'm like, she's my first, like, yes, I've had a job interview at MLB before, but it was kind of like informal. It was casual. It was just like friendly talking about project ideas. And now my first like real job interview in baseball is with like my baseball idol. And I was like, absolutely terrifying. She was like through the entire time working with her too. She's just so level and friendly and welcoming, and just she's such like a consistent person. So during that interview, I was kind of like, oh, I can just have a conversation with you. That's cool. So taking the job instead of the fellowship, but just working with her on a day-to-day, I think that at the start I was so intimidated because again, I was just like, oh my gosh, I get to work with Kim Eng and she's like one of my bosses right now. That's so cool.
Yeah.
But you just see the way that she works, and she works so hard, but I would say like not loud, if that kind of makes sense. Like she works so hard, but she's not ever being like, okay, we need to do this. She's not shouting out like assignment thing or challenges, anything like that. It's all just kind of like a conversation, and again, very level. So it was kind of amazing having this opportunity to work with her with the goal of growing girls baseball and growing like girls baseball too, and helping these high schoolers get into college baseball. So it was cool, just like if I take a step back and see her impact on the game and then how we got to work together to achieve those goals. That was really cool. But also she's just such a fun, friendly person. I mean, these events and stuff, we've gotten to travel all over the country together. And of course, when you do that, you get friendly. You have a lot of dinners together and just like you share stories and everything. So that was really cool. And just, I think what I gained like the most from her too, was just seeing the way she works and how much people respect her just by doing her work and doing it well and always having like a good work product. Something that I often tell people on the field, but also kind of like in a work setting, is you should never tell people how great you are. You should always let your work or your plane or whatever speak for itself. And clearly that's what she's done her whole career. And literally just her work product and how she's gone about doing her work has gained her so much respect, so much admiration from so many people. So it was really cool getting to work with her.
Yeah, across the board. I mean, when the Marlins hired her, everybody had good things to say about her. Like there wasn't anybody who didn't give her glowing, just the admiration. It was so cool. I mean, you don't always see across the board like that, just somebody get all of this positive recognition. And I love that you said too, that she handles herself in such a level way. I think especially, and I don't want to keep going back to as a woman, but sometimes, you know, it can be, oh, I don't know if I should act a certain way or not. And she just seems to be doing her the whole time. And it's cool that like her hard work has now paid off, and it speaks for itself, you know. I mean, she's where she's at now because of the way that she carries herself, and you're right, the product that she puts out, that's so important.
I think too, just the attention that she actually puts into every single person who she works with too, that really shows. And by that, I mean, yes, the people who are working for her, but every single one of the high school kids at our development events, she knows all the names, she knows what position they play, where they're coming from, who's trying to play college.
That's awesome.
They all know her. And
that's so cool.
It was just so cool at those events. They all know who she is and how important she is. And so they would go up and be like, hey, Kim, like, do you remember me? And she'd be like, oh yeah, Paloma, like, what's up? Like, how's your arm doing? And she knows that she's a left-handed pitcher on a high school team in DC. So it's just, she pays so much attention and cares so much about everybody around her. I think in a way that sometimes when you say like they care about people around you, it's just like, oh, I'm going to like give them a lot of attention and coddle them. That's not really it. She just lets you grow and kind of thrive, and she'll help you. She'll adjust things. She'll give her perspective. And it's always like concise and like I haven't seen anybody else do before. And she does that with these girls on field too, or with the women who play on the USA Women's Baseball national team who are trying to become coaches. she'll influence them in a really positive way. And it's just so concise and accessible. And I think that's really cool. And again, for the girls playing, every single one of them, when she was hired, I see all over their social media and everything, they're crying, they're freaking out because this person who they actually know and have a genuine connection to. Oh yeah, we were all bawling our eyes out.
Bawling.
They know her at a very personal level. And I think that shows something huge on her end too, because she's been so successful for so long, but she puts in that care, effort, and attention to, I don't want to say the little guys, but kind of like these little high schoolers who are just like about careers in baseball, who are just having the daily struggle of being the only girl on their baseball team. And they have somebody to look up to in that crazy high position, knowing that she knows them and appreciates them and respects them too.
I think something that's very powerful about her is not only just her work ethic and her what she's done in her career speaks for itself, but I think that no matter what position you've been put in, no matter how many years you've been somewhere, it's the way you carry yourself. It's the way that you interact with people. It's the way that you're remembered. Like somebody can remember that you did this great project or you built this empire of some sort. Great. But if you were a really nasty person or you didn't treat people with respect, like you don't really get the same type of credibility. And I think that carries it. And another thing that you said that I just actually learned from you, which is important to always remember, is people forget that the younger generation is what's coming next. Like the younger generation is carrying our sport. It's carrying us into our careers. It's keeping baseball and softball relevant. It's keeping the game relevant, and it's only growing it to become stronger and better. And you never know, like who you never realize or really recognize who you affect, who you're touching, who you're hoping to inspire. Like, and people immediately don't think, oh, the younger little kids. Some people don't even think they're paying attention. But the fact that you just said all those girls from across the country, you guys have been doing events and stuff. It's not just the tri-state area, it's everywhere. So that that Kim, even in those one or two like interactions, those one or two moments where she knew your name or just made you feel like special in those couple of minutes, that carries her forever. And I just think that that's something in my career, in our careers and others' careers, to remember that, like, you know, that it could take just one little interaction of kindness and respect that will platoon you like so much further.
And I think that we sometimes forget too, that like when we were younger, sometimes those things just like meant so much to us and like shaped our careers too. In ways that we maybe didn't expect. I had kind of I want to come back to like the girls baseball side, but I had kind of a cool run in last year at winter meetings. So when I was, I think 10 years old, I was at a Blue Jays game and my brother would always keep score, but then not only would he keep score, he had to add up all the totals and the stats. So we were always the last people to leave the stadium because we were sitting so we're sitting there at the game. I'm kind of like leaning over, like looking at like all the players like move around and stuff. And then a player comes out and he says, "Do you want this?" and hands me a bat. And I was just, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But again, it was just one of those moments as like a young girl where I'm like, oh my gosh, a real baseball player is acknowledging me like as a girl, as somebody who likes baseball, who loves baseball, who'd appreciate this, when I have like my brother sitting next to me who's like actively engaged in like keeping score. So like, that was like a big moment for me as a kid. I have the bat literally like right behind me because I'm in my But last year I was in a meeting and then this guy walks in and I was just like, he looks kind of familiar. And then they introduced him and we're just like, oh my gosh, that's Mike Sweeney, the Kansas player who gave me a bat when I was 11 years old. And so after the meeting, I kind of went up to him and I was like, hey, this is the weirdest like introduction ever. But when I was like a small child, you gave me that. And he started like, I don't know if I should say this, but he started like tearing up. And then I started tearing up and we're like hugging each other. I think he realized like doing that small gesture that he doesn't remember, it had such an effect on me. And now we're like meeting at the baseball winter meetings and talking to each other. And it's just those little things, you don't know how it's going to affect somebody.
Yes. Sorry. That is just just got
I feel like I should get out the bat. It's literally
can we please see the bat?
Oh my God.
It's like covered in dust, but
cool.
But yeah,
that's
just
amazing.
Like, just means so much to like kids and will impact them literally for their whole life. I mean, I'm sitting here over half my life later being like, look, it's my sweetie's bat. So
Oh my God, but that's so cool. Like, I'm sure, oh my God, he must have just been like, I can only imagine the emotion. I am tearing up at this.
Yeah, I'm like,
and I wasn't there, but like, that is just, oh my God, that's so cool. What an awesome story you both have now. I mean, that he has too. Wow. God, that's so cool.
That is, and that's what it's about. Like, I think we all have our different walks of how we were inspired to work in sports or in media, or, you know, we're all fortunate that we're passionate about baseball and we get to work in it every day, which is incredible. But it's so much more than just like loving the sport and the game. It's about when you have a platform like that. And I hear so many of like our talent at MLB Network say it, and it trickles down just to people that have been working at our network for years and years and talk to kids and give advice. Like, yes, we're all blessed at whatever level you work at in this game to do what we do. But it's so much more important to give back. It's so much more important to do something so minimal that, like, you know, he might have had a bunch of bats, a bunch of gloves, balls. Like, to him, it was like, oh, I don't want this anymore. Like, oh, here, I'll find a nice fan. Like, that might have, but like the way that it impacted you, like that little small gesture, that little form of giving back, it just led on and on, like a ripple effect. And now that might be something where you remember that happened to you. So now you may pass on something to a young girl in baseball, or who knows, a young guy that might be at a women's baseball game, and give him something, you know, like it could, it's just like a giving sport, and it's about giving back, and it's about understanding. It's about human effect. It's being a good person, being a good human, but we all have the same passion and love. So why not be kind with it, and why not share it? You know, like
that's what I love about the girls baseball side too. And that's like such an exciting part of my job, even though it's probably not like the main part of my job at this point, but it's just so exciting, is that I think the female baseball players too, they've all like been in this situation where they're the only one, they're the only girl, they might not see others. And so it's just, they really appreciate these opportunities, even from a very young age. And they like all these role models of like any woman who works in baseball who they interact with, any of their coaches, one another too. Like the younger kids look up to the older kids, and it's very like transparent too. Like they're all very supportive of each other. And I just think like, I still have these crazy moments too, where like one day last year, there are these two sisters out of LA, and one's in high school, one's I guess in middle school now. The high schooler was playing at one of our development events. The younger one was there, and she was in our youngest event, and she was like the tiniest kid there. She's the cutest. Her name's Sophia. But she came up to me and she was like, "Can we play catch?" And she was like panicking and like hands shaking because like I'm like, "Yeah, we can play catch." So we played catch. The next day, she comes over to me like crying a little bit, being like, "Could you maybe sign my baseball?" And so it's just like those things that like crying, you're like, you do not know a man ago. But just those little things where it's like just giving some attention, it means so much to them. But so in the sport, I mean, these girls seeing Kim Ng and others in these positions, they all want to work in baseball now. And by all, I mean all of them. Like we did a survey last year, and I think 90% that they want to work in baseball. And it's attainable for them now. And they're all pursuing that. And like this one girl, Madison Femia, she's been part of all of our youth development events. She decided that she wanted to be a coach. And so she picked her college based on where she could be a coach of the like men's baseball team. So like they're on that track just because they've been exposed to these experiences. So it's just the coolest thing to see all these girls progressing and doing it so quickly. And I think we're going to keep seeing like all these changes happening and all these amazing qualified women getting into the game because they've also been thinking about it for so long.
All right. So one big question I have going into this brand new year, a new exciting season, hopefully everything underway in a safe and healthy manner. Liz, what can you tell us about some exciting things the league office may have coming up for the young girls in baseball, or any programs that are headed our way?
Yeah, so I think that we're trying to adjust our calendar so that we can get in as much as possible. So normally we kind of kick off the year with the Trailblazer series in April, but we're going to try to kind of adjust that, push that, so that we can make sure that we're getting programming to those girls. So I think this year there's going to be a mix of both virtual programming, which I think we came close to perfecting last year. So I think it'll be really great this year when we roll that out. And then hopefully in the fall, we're back on the field. Hopefully everything's back to normal and we can do these events. I think in 2020, we did learn how to do virtual programming that I think we actually will be just bringing back in regular times too. It enhanced the programming. We were able to be more consistent with the girls, which was great. I'll just kind of shout out one of our programs, Elite Development Invitational this year for girls baseball. We were planning on doing a 1-week event, very high quality, intensive development on field at Vero Beach. We couldn't do it. And so we tried to brainstorm, okay, how do we still have this kind of impact on the girls and give them an opportunity to develop? So we ended up doing I think it was 13-week series with them where they would receive instruction on their position specific work. On Monday nights, they would get a panel or a kind of like one-on-one discussion with somebody who's really exciting in the industry, but also other topics like college recruitment, careers in baseball, mental skills. Like we had Hannah Huseman, who is incredible on the program for a couple of weeks. And it was just a great opportunity to get them some kind of development in baseball, but also kind of like general skills too for their age groups. And I think one thing too from that program that we really loved was that each week we would do a small development check-in. And so we had these small groups of girls, one of the staff members, and we would just check in, okay, did you meet your goals for the week? How's your progress? What are you struggling with? And it was just this nice community building aspect that helped them develop mostly mentally. And we actually saw from the start to the end, just their way of thinking about baseball radically changed. Very goal oriented. They were making plans for themselves. They were planning their weekly training. It was really cool to see. So I think a lot more of that. Hopefully we're on the field though. I think we're all itching to get back. In the late summer, fall, we'll be able to get back out there.
That's so cool that you're doing something not only with the sport, but it sounds like you're teaching these girls a lot of lessons that they're going to take regardless of whether or not they continue on this path of working in baseball. Because, you just to come full circle here, you kind of fell into it. I want to say almost on accident, but like it seemed like the universe was just really pushing you towards, hey, you need to work in baseball. And so, but I think it's awesome that even if these girls decide not to, all of the things you just talked about are huge life skills that they can take into any field that they go into post, high school or college, whatever they decide to do. So that's, more than just, it's bigger than baseball, honestly. And I think that's such a cool thing that you're doing for these girls. It's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah,
Liz, where can people that are interested, that are watching this, that want to learn more about these programs, that want to learn more about maybe what you do or what your department does, where can people find, what kind of websites, what kind of social media platforms can people find these things on?
So the big one would be playball.org. That's MLB's big youth development website. And on there, you will be able to find all of the girls baseball programs. We'll also say RBI, girls baseball leagues have joined RBI now. And so they have kind of a home national league to be a part of. So you can find information on RBI there. I would say on social media, the play ball accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as at MLB Develops. That's a huge one. That's where you'll see the high school kids, more advanced kids. So that's a great platform as well. Then if you want to get directly in touch with me about the girls baseball stuff or really anything else too, feel free to use this email address, girlsbaseball@mlb.com. It's intended for the youth baseball, but it comes directly to me. So feel free to send questions. If you're a woman wanting to work in baseball, shoot an email there, and I'll get back to you on that.
Awesome. This was so much fun talking to you. Just not only did we learn, the two of us learn a lot more about what you do, but just the stories you have are incredible too. You're really making a huge difference in so many kids' lives and for the state of baseball in our country. It was really awesome.
This has been so much fun. And it's just, when we were talking about this, it's incredible to talk to other women in baseball kind of around the same age too, and just like seeing the passion that's like so huge in all of us. It's just it's a community to have, and I'm looking forward to just like being friends with you guys.
I know. we're gonna have to go when you come back to Manhattan. We're gonna have to go get some burrata. It sounds like.
Yes, for those of you that don't know but want to know, you should know that Donna, Liz, and I are big fans of burrata cheese. If you haven't had it, you don't know what you're missing. Liz is currently in Toronto right now, but when she comes back to the MLB offices in New York, we will be doing a very COVID-friendly girls gathering, 6 feet apart, enjoying some nice burrata together, and celebrating what hopefully comes to be a safe and healthy and normal 2021 season, and all the hopeful events that are going to continue and head our way. So I'm pretty pumped about that. I hope everybody here enjoyed listening to Liz and listening to us, learning something. Like Liz said, please follow and take interest and check out all of those social media platforms and places that you can find more information about the youth events and women and girls in baseball for Major League Baseball. And we look forward to our next time seeing you, Liz, and talking to you soon.
I can't wait, guys, for the burrata, but just, continuing this.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
All right, guys, and that wraps it up for our first episode of Chasing Upstairs. We hope you guys enjoyed, and thank you for listening.
And remember, in our world, it's always great to chase upstairs.